Well, hey friends, Raj here with this Grote Hollowbody thin line guitar made in China. $160 shipped to my door. This is kind of a difficult review for me to be completely unbiased about because I really love thin line Hollowbodies. I have a history with them. I had an Epiphone Sorrento 1997, I think. That's a thin line with a Florentine cutaway, trap, two P90s, same kind of layout, except two P90s. I had to sell it for financial reasons. I had a 1955 Gibson 225, which is a single P90, Florentine cutaway, trap, very similar layout to this aside from the cutaway. And it was stolen, and by the time they recovered it, which thankfully it was, I'd already made other arrangements, and I had to sell it for financial reasons. So there was just a bit of a pattern with those guitars. But I do love them. There's something about, even acoustically, which I don't know if I'll be able to capture really. Something acoustically about the size, the depth of this body, the trap tailpiece that's just cool and spongy, and it's very unique, and I love playing guitars that are this form factor, and I've never seen anything close to this price for one of them. There are a few brands that make budget thin line hollow bodies, but we're talking about $500. We're talking about $750. This was $160. And there are problems that you're going to have to address. If you're willing to address them, I think this is a fantastic deal. So let me go into what I had to do to get it to the point that it's at now. The first and the biggest issue are the frets. Even though it's bound nicely, they've done a pretty nice job. I love the color of the binding. I think they got the color perfectly right. It's a vintage, and the binding itself is done well. The fret ends were dressed pretty handsomely. There's nothing sharp, not even anything close. But the frets were not in great shape. They were definitely not polished. They were fairly rough all around. A couple of significant marks, but more importantly than all that, there were a few high spots that I had to deal with. So basically I had to file down, recrown, and do some sanding and steel wooling on maybe 5 or 6 spots to get the guitar to be playable all the way around, to get the action to a reasonable place for a guitar like this. So that was by far the biggest gripe. Beyond that, the nut had a couple spots that needed to be filed, just a couple little rough patches and pings that needed to be filed out a bit. And then The tuners are obviously cheap. They're, it's the only piece of hardware on the guitar that I think is obviously cheap, just by the feel of it. But that being said, the guitar tuned up, and as long as you're tuning up into the note and you're not having to deal with a lot of slack going down out of the note, it seems to be holding tune just fine. If I decide to play this out ever, I'm almost definitely going to replace the tuners to have something that feels a little bit better in the hand. But aside from that, hardware-wise, it feels all right. I'm guessing these are dime-sized pots. I can't really get my camera in there enough to see for sure, but they're working great for volume and tone. And the Tune-O-Matic copy bridge is pretty killer, actually. It doesn't have the retaining spring bar that goes across. Every individual saddle has a spring. I kind of dig that. The pickup. It's the only other big thing, right? I was expecting it to be terrible, and it is not terrible at all. As a matter of fact, I don't have any intention of replacing it. For me, and this is going to be different for everybody, but on a P90, I find, even on expensive P90s that I've owned for Lawlers and things like that, that I don't really love playing those guitars with the volume and the tone all the way up. I usually roll back 20, 30% on all that, and this is like that. It's no exception. So, it's gonna differ with what you expect out of a P90 guitar. But since I'm looking for more of a woody kind of tone, I have no problem with that tone, and that's at about 60% on the tone, 75% on volume. I'll even go more mellow than that. But everything matters in that chain, right? If I changed out, the amp setting would be totally different. But that's very subjective. I've seen some reviews for this that say that the pickup needs to be raised, that people have shimmed that pickup. And on this guitar anyway, for what I go for with P90s, I tend to disagree, and I don't think that that's any further away than a lot of other guitars I've seen and that I've owned that are like this. So, again, just depends on exactly what you're going for and whether you want a super high output and you're trying to rock out with this guitar. This wouldn't be my first guitar to go to rock out in any way, shape, or form, but I know some rockabilly folks and some other folks that love it for that, and that's cool. Whatever floats your boat. For me, I don't really play jazz, but there's some tones about kind of classic jazz tones that I want to be able to get on recordings. Like I said, Wes Montgomery, George Benson, and even just on funk stuff and soul stuff, just having something a little more woody. Tonally speaking. It's just super cool to me. Pretty much unrestricted up to 14. And I don't know, I hope that you can hear that sponginess come through, because that's the only word I really have for it. But I really like it. I think it's kind of a combination of the size of the bout, the thinness of the bout, and the fact that this trap on these guitars is moving quite a bit. It's actually a lot of tone. If you were to put your ear to this guitar and tap on that, you'd hear a lot of tone coming from that. There's something about that combination that I've always enjoyed. So just from a tactile playing perspective and kind of the feedback you get off the instrument. If you came here to hear a bunch of distortion or overdrive with this pickup, I'm sorry, you're not going to get it on this particular review. But I will do this. I'll start down close to the bridge, and you can hear the difference as I move up. And of course, this is true with most pickups, but in P90s, I feel like it's more pronounced. Not that that isn't true for other guitars and other pickups, but at $160, The fact that you can have that sort of tonal control. The fretwork notwithstanding, they've done a great job in putting this guitar together and designing it. And I don't mean to harp on it. And obviously, if you're a beginning guitar player, it's probably not for you because for many reasons. First of all, these aren't the easiest guitars to play in the world. Anyway, even if you got a pretty high dollar Hollowbody, they're usually the action's a little bit higher just to get the tone. I'm not sure what it is, maybe 12-inch radius. I'm not sure if that's on the specs or not. I'll look. I'll put it up here if it is. The one guitar that I own that I can compare this directly to is the Lore. So obviously, some differences: two P90s versus one P90. The Lore is a much fatter body. It's kind of a full-size acoustic bout almost, and the Lore feels a lot more like an acoustic to play, actually, which is good and bad. It's good in that I picked this guitar up. I picked the Lore up quite a bit. I don't know. I keep on calling it the Lore. It's weird. I'm just going to say the Lore. Is that okay? I picked this guitar up to play a lot just because it does have acoustic qualities that I don't have to plug it in to really hear, clarity and chords and whatnot. And then I'll use it to track a lot of things that I wouldn't have thought I would because it's around. It has a V-neck, which is really, I like a lot. Totally depends on your flavor. But this guitar, I don't think they sell it anymore. The single pickup version of this guitar retails at around $750. It came with a better but not perfect fret job. I did have to work on the frets on this guitar as well. It's maybe, depending on exactly what you dig, obviously it's a different type of sunburst. It's got a lot more black in the on the edge there. But man, and it's got a wooden bridge. But the same day I bought this Lore, I played a thin line Lore. Lore. And I didn't buy that, even though I preferred that body style. I didn't buy that guitar because the fretwork was so bad and the action was so high. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to fix it myself, and I didn't really want to spend to buy the guitar and to get the guitar fixed. I didn't want to spend $1,000. So I got this guitar, and I'm happy with this purchase. But this is $750, friends. This is $160, and it's very, very difficult. If I was sitting on a guitar shop right now, I don't think there'd be any question that I would go home with this if I was choosing between these two. Between the price difference, the fact that I like this form factor better, the thin line better, but also acoustically, this feels more like a classic thin line hollow than that does like a full hollow, if that makes any sense. But you have to do some work. That's the downside. So if you're willing to do the work, if you have the tools, if you're pretty confident in your skills, or you know somebody who is, or you don't mind spending $100 for a proper fret job and setup, you're in $260. At $260, if I bought this guitar as is for $260, I would have been thrilled. And I know that some people review these guitars straight out of the box as is, strings that came on them, setup that came from the factory. I don't think that's reasonable. I just don't think that's the way that they intended to be thought of. So anyway, probably more excited about this guitar in terms of the budget instruments that I've owned than I've ever been about a budget guitar. And if I would have paid $500 for the condition it's in now, I would still be pretty excited about it. So I guess that's a strange review, and it's not easily summed up. I think folks who are looking for a jazz box who know how to do a little work. Let me roll the tone back a little bit. I think it gets really beautiful, even with the tone almost all the way down. Anyone that's looking for that sort of thing, I don't think there's anything else that's even close to this price range for this exact, thin line hollow. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I'd love to check out more. The other guitar player that I would maybe recommend this to are folks who are, you can hear the tuning is slipped out ever so slightly. On the low E. The other type of guitar player I would recommend this for, aside from somebody who's in a studio situation who needs a hollow, is somebody who's coming from an acoustic world that wants to play electric live, is used to doing strumming or finger picking. I think if you spend a little time and finding the sweet spot for this pickup, I think that if someone were to take the time to kind of find the sweet spot for the pickup, that it's a very nice guitar for those cowboy chords or singer-songwriter style. Very comparable probably to a Casino in terms of the way it's going to sound, and Casino obviously has two P90s, so you have a little bit more tonal variation, but this pickup will get bright when it needs to, but that sweet spot, that woody kind of mellow tone is what I'm looking for out of a P90. It's what I'm looking for if I'm going to play this kind of guitar in a singer-songwriter setting. And it's got all that. So if you can deal with those jeers, if you can deal with the problems that it's got, if you have the tools and the gear to do a proper fret job, or you don't mind taking it in, it's a pretty incredible value. That is more than my 2 cents. That's it for now, y'all. Happy playing.